Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Dobson, and my heart has been touched by the Spirit of the Lord here today. He's here. He's here. Shirley and I have been attending the National Day of Prayer for 25 years, and I missed one of those through sickness, and have been here for the rest. But I don't remember a moment of what my dad used to call unction and ordination like we have heard today from Rabbi Kahn and from the others. And I appreciate Glenn Shepherd's prayer just now, that he would ask that the spirit of this place would go out and around the world. Now, I have been asked to introduce our next speaker, but before that, I was asked to make some remarks from my heart, whatever is uppermost for me. And if I had to list the most important thing for me to pray about today, that would outrank everything else, it would be to pray for the children. Because the children of this country and in many places around the world are in danger, and their world has changed. And I think of the millions of kids today are in schools and classrooms around the country where they are being taught things that we could consider alien to our faith. And they're being influenced by a culture that is perverting them. And that would have to be first on the list, because through them come future generations and what America will be like if the Lord tarries. And so I'm reminded today of our own family, where when I was at USC and I was finishing a doctorate and finally got that done, I don't mean to be self-serving, but the world opened up to me. And I found myself running at about 100 miles an hour on all kinds of things that seemed very important at the time. And in fact, I spent a day with Marty Rubenstein, who is the creator of the Larry King Show, and he invited me to come and have a show like that out of Washington, D.C., a nationwide program. And if I had done that, my family would have been sacrificed. There was just and focus on the family, what I was doing at the time would not have been possible. I weighed it in the balance. There were a lot of things like that were going on in my life. My father, who was always a moral beacon for me, was on his way to Hawaii to speak. And he had 4 hours with nothing to do but to think about that, and he wrote me a letter, which I still have today. That was many, many years ago. And he wrote me to say he was proud of me, that it was wonderful, the things that were happening in my life, but he was warning me that the world has changed. I remember his words. I've got them. They're memorized, where he said, the world into which you were born. Now, let me rephrase it. The world that your daughter, and we only had one child at the time, the world that your daughter is growing up in is much farther gone into moral decline than the world into which you were born. And all of them will be influenced by a culture that is alien to the things that you have taught and believed. And we must begin to pray for her, pray for her daily, for her soul, for her salvation. Because he said, when you sit where I sit today, then when you sit there, you will see that all those accomplishments and those things that you're chasing, as good as they are, will be pale and washed out if you lose your children. And we began praying for Danae and for those that were to follow. It turned out to be only one. We had 2 children. And we began fasting and praying for them because we realized they were at risk and they were in danger. Folks, that was the late 60s and 70s. And the world now has changed radically since that time. And if it had gone into moral decline then, what about now? What about the whole LGBT agenda that's being taught increasingly in the schools and elsewhere? The third letter being described there, most people don't make reference to, but LGBT, that's bisexual. That means sex with many and all. It means moral debauchery. And now the transgender movement that has taken over the schools is having an impact where in some places 5-year-olds are being asked to choose whether they're male or female. I saw an article the other day that was the result of a study, a poll that was made where something approaching 50% of young people were asked whether they identify with masculinity or femininity. And almost, I think it was 46% of them said neither, but both. That has taken hold with our kids. And what's being taught to kindergartners in California and Massachusetts and other places, where these little 5-year-old bright-eyed kids who know nothing about anything really are being taught the elements of a homosexual point of view. I'm not here to attack anybody today, but I'm saying our children are at risk, and we must pray for them. We must fast for them. And on this day of prayer, I hold them up before the Lord and ask Him to protect them from anything that would twist or warp their moral character. Because as my dad said, the world has gone much far into moral decline than the world into which we were born. And you know it true. It's true as well. And so that is my prayer today.